keeps acting like he hears something back there. And here I am going to tell this bunch of stuff. That's great. Shh, quiet. If he starts whining, it's just because he wants to get going. But anyways, we're up here running these night beds. There's a bunch of big buck tracks and night beds. There's no sheds in them, but we've got to do it, right? Anyways, I'm going to get into a subject today that I get asked about all the time. And I think it's probably high time I answer the question, and then people will leave me alone. Okay? So the question is, does Bigfoot exist in New Hampshire, and have I ever seen it? Short answer is no, I haven't seen it. And 2, I don't know. I'm not a believer and I'm not a non-believer. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. I like to take the facts and look at them, and if it looks like it's real, then I'll go with it. I'm a tracker by trade. I mean, that's what I do, and I have to educate myself on different types of tracks. Sometimes Bigfoot tracks are mistaken for doubled up bear tracks, which I can tell you, if you see them, boy, I tell you, you'll start thinking you see a Bigfoot right off the bat. You need to lay down. Chance. Down. Thank you. Down. Down. Stay. And there's probably deer down below us. There's all kinds of anomalies in the woods that can look like what you think you see, but you don't. And if you allow that to be in your head, it's going to predispose you for seeing things that's not really there. If you know what I mean. If you believe you're going to see something, you're going to see it. Okay, so that said, I have had some experiences that could be construed as things. So I'll go through them. I'm not going to say one way or another. That's up to you. You guys make the decision on what you think. Okay, so last summer, Chance and I were coming off a Class 6 road. We had just checked a whole bunch of cameras, and it was twilight, you know, the sun had gone down, and it was just that last bunch of light, gray light I sometimes call it. And about 100 yards ahead of us on this straightaway, there was a large, tall figure in the road moving away from us. And it looked like it was arms swinging and legs going, and boy, I can tell you, there was about 30 seconds there that I was convinced I was seeing what I thought I was seeing. And then it turned and it looked at me. Turned quartered and looked at me. It was a moose. It was a cow moose. But just the way she was moving away from me, and you know how they kind of walk with their legs swinging when they start going away from you, running, jogging. They kind of do this, and those front legs swinging out looked like they were doing this. Had that thing had not quartered back in the trail and looked and turned its head and just kept doing it and going down in the woods, I would have thought I saw a wood devil running away from me, without a doubt. And yes, I said wood devil, and I'll explain that in a bit. Anyways, that was one instance, and boy, I can tell you I was relieved, and I laughed like hell after I saw it as a moose, because I said, there's got to be a lot of people that see that real quick and who are not educated enough to use deductive reasoning to take it apart and then put it back together and figure it out, that would have thought that was a Sasquatch. Hands down. Anyways, on that note, I'll caveat this next part and say, I wasn't there, my wife was, I trust her. She is not prone to embellishment at all. As a matter of fact, she calls me on a lot of bullshit, like a lot of your wives do. Anyways, last fall, I think it was beginning of October, might have been the end of October, I can't remember, I have to look it up. But anyways, I get a call from a young hunter. Lay down. Lay down. He's not going to lay down. He says it's too cold. I get a call from a hunter. He'd shot his first deer with a bow. Young kid. So we went out to help him with the dogs, because we do the leash blood tracking in New Hampshire. So we went out and we got on this doe. He'd hit it. And there was blood the whole trail. I mean, there was blood everywhere. I mean, not everywhere, I shouldn't say it that way. There was a blood trail. Sparse in places, but there was blood the whole trail. And we followed it for, I don't know how long, but it was midnight when we called the track. We were pretty sure we had jumped it out of a bed and we were pushing it and it was still bleeding. So it was probably a decent wound, but not a fatal one. So we backed out, and he was really convinced that if he got on it, he could get it. So the kid went back in the next day, him and his dad, and they were tracking it. And they had tracked it till the blood had stopped at a bed. And then from that bed, they couldn't find it. So they called Diane back. She came back. She got on the track, and they went. And I don't know, they went 75, 80 yards, and boom, there was the deer. Coyotes had gotten it up out of its bed, and throughout that trail, they were finding tufts of hair. When they got to it, the deer was dead. It was tore up. The deer had been hit here in the neck. It was all over. I guess it was strewn all over. So they took a different trail out. There was a shortcut that they knew how to get to, and they got on the trail. I guess it was a snowmobile trail or something, and it was kind of muddy in some spots. And I'll put this picture up here. You guys can be the judge. She said it was about 14 inches long. You see the track, it's not shaped like what you think of as a Sasquatch track, okay? I'll explain this to you later too, but the Sasquatch here in New Hampshire don't have tracks like that, I guess. From what I've read, they're a lot narrower. But you can see this track here in this picture. The other thing I'm going to tell you is it's cold. I mean, it's seriously cold at night. This track is frozen. It's from a few days earlier when there was a little warm stretch, but it's not any time of the year where someone would be just bit-bopping out in the middle of the woods. And they were about 1.5 miles back in the woods, so it's not like somebody is walking along an old Class 6 road in October with no shoes on. So, hey, maybe some people like walking in the cold with no shoes on. I know I don't. So take that or leave it. It was kind of strange. They got out of there. There was a few tracks there, I guess. But so the next incident happened the winter before that. James Smith and I were out shed hunting for moose in Unity, and there was a spot that the moose usually get up in the yard in the wintertime. We kind of like to get in there because a lot of times you'll find sheds. So we got in, and it's like a big bowl and a swamp in the bottom of it, and we're going along, and it was weird. There was no moose shed, no moose tracks or a sign in there. There was no feeding sign, nothing. So they hadn't even been in that yard, and which is odd in itself, but not that odd, I guess. But then as I was going along the top of the little rim right there looking for sign, I saw tracks crossing the center of that swamp. So I walked down in. And once again, I mean, it was early spring. So there was still snow patches everywhere. And in that swamp, it was icy and, you know, that icy snow. It's not quite snow, but it's not quite ice. And whatever it was had walked through the middle of it, and there were patches of open moss, and you could see the tracks in the moss too. And it wasn't a moose. It was a person's foot. It was a barefoot. Now, like I said before, I know the difference between a doubled up bear track. They look very distinctive. They look kind of like a person's foot, but they're distinctive. So, no, this was not that. This was a person's track. About 12 to 13, maybe 14 inches long. Narrow, like a human's foot, without an arch. There was no arch. It was flat, almost like a monkey or a bear. And it went through the center of the swamp. There were 8 or 10 of them, and then it went up on the hard bank and into the leaves. That open bank on that other side was open leaves, maple leaves. So it went up through. You could kind of see an indentation as it started, but then as it went through, you lost it. We took some pictures. I'll put that up. I don't think that you can really see any detail. They were hard to see detail in some of them, but the ones that were in the moss, of the frozen moss that were in there, were really distinct, and they were obviously a person's foot. Way too narrow to be a doubled up bear track. Didn't look like the picture perfect Bigfoot tracks you see out in the Midwest. or I'm not in the Midwest, but up in the Pacific Northwest, that you see this perfect track in the snow that's obviously fake. No, this was something different. The tracks were not perfect as it went. And anytime you find something that has perfectly made tracks that you can read like that, and there's no track at all that's smudged or something to that effect, it's probably not real. But anyways, that's the story for a different time too. Come here, Chance. Come on, lay down. All right, so those two instances are take them or leave them. They can be all kinds of things. I'm going to get people who will say that they were just this or that, the other thing. Whatever, I don't care. I got nothing invested in this. I'm just answering the questions that you guys have asked. All right, so the last thing is something that I was directly involved in, and was very strange in the sense that, not going to name the person, but it's one of the kids and that I used to take to Pittsburgh and that saw this. So okay. So back in the 90s, I used to go to Pittsburgh every summer with the kids. Take them up. We'd go lake trout fishing in the first Connecticut, and then we'd go, after we get back, we'd get done mid-morning, and then we'd come back and we'd drive the roads and we'd explore and fish in the brooks and, you know, all that kind of stuff you do up there. So we were in this one part of town. I'm not going to name where it was, but it was close to the Canadian border. It's a dead end, and we got to the end of the dead end, and there was a trail. I think it was a snowmobile trail. I don't know. We didn't get out, but I wanted to. I was in the front seat of the truck, facing that road. And I was looking on my map to see how far to the Canadian border, because I was going to walk up to the Canadian border with the kids. Thought it'd be kind of cool. When all of a sudden, one of the kids who was I had an extra cab pickup. One of the kids was in the back, which is funny because I used to flip a coin to see who had to ride in the back and who could ride in the front. But anyways, the one in the back started flipping out and went ballistic. And I turned around and I got him calmed down, and I said, what's the matter? What's the matter? I thought maybe they got stung by a bee. I thought maybe there was a bear or something that they saw. And this is what they said. Something just ran behind the truck. And I says, yeah, was it a deer? Was it a moose? It was on two legs and it was gray. It was two legs and it was gray. And I mean, this person, who's now an adult, as a matter of fact, is not prone to embellishment like my wife. They didn't tell these stories. It wasn't the other kid. Had the other kid done this, I would have laughed and said bullshit, and that would have been it. But this one child was not prone to making crazy statements. Serious. And I said, what did you see? Explain it to me. It was tall and gray and ran on two legs, and watched the truck as it ran across into the woods. Well, me being a tracker, I wanted to see what it was, if it was some guy or what it was. Now, we were pretty far out there for it to be a person. There was no other trucks on that road all day. So I don't think it was somebody playing a prank. None of the camps had people at it at that point either. They were there. Everybody was. We were in the middle of the week on a kind of an off week. So, so that said, I got out, and so didn't the other kid. And we got out and we looked. We couldn't find any tracks. But you know how the roads are in Pittsburgh? They're that packed slate bluestone. It doesn't really make tracks. So we went on both sides, and we couldn't find any sign of any movement. So we got back in the doors, we got in the truck, and we left. Okay? I didn't think nothing more of it. The next day, we went to the same stretch of road, but on a different area, and got out, and we were going to fish. And as we were walking up the road, I wasn't even thinking about this. This is one of those things that's like, it's gone, it's out of my head. And we're walking up this other road, which is only, it's not that far from where this had happened. And I just got this feeling I had to leave. I didn't carry a gun at the time. I didn't even own a handgun at the time. I didn't have any weapon with me other than a pocket knife, and I just got this gut feeling, and the hairs went up on the back of my neck and said I had to go. Told the kids that I had a better spot we were going to fish. They complained because they were catching fish, and I says, no, I got a better spot, and I got them back to the truck because we had walked up half a mile. We got back to the truck and we left. I just felt like there was something watching me. I had heard stuff, some breaking in sticks in the woods, and I just said, yeah, it could be a bear. I just want to get out of here. So we left. So fast forward about 2 years. I just was, the internet was a new thing to me at this point, and it's like, oh, cool, I could check out all this cool stuff, and I'd watched an episode of In Search Of with Bigfoot, So I'm like, oh, I wonder if there's Bigfoots in New Hampshire, ha, 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 tongue-in-cheek. And I looked, and I came up with this story about wood devils. Back when they used to log up in Pittsburgh, back the old school logging, was with the hand saws and the axes, and they had the camps, and everybody would walk to the log yard and back, and they'd pull stuff out with horses. We're talking back there, right? Well, those old stories told about wood devils. And what a wood devil was, now get this, was a very tall, very thin, gray-haired creature or being, like a Sasquatch, that would follow the loggers back and forth through the woods. They would be behind the loggers, and when they would go past where this creature was, it would run from one tree to the other. So when you'd hear something, you'd look back, you wouldn't see it because it'd be hiding behind a big tree. Does that sound familiar? I'm facing this way with the truck, and it runs behind the truck watching me. My hairs went up on the back of my neck. Could it really been a wood devil? I don't know. Well, that's the story. It ain't much of a story, but it's what it is. I ain't been back to that part of Pittsburgh for a long time. I've kind of been in that area, moose shed hunting and stuff, and I ain't never had another experience like it. And I can tell you, I've never seen anything that looks like a Bigfoot track up there. So, I don't know. You can take it or leave it. That's your story. Hopefully it came out all right. But, there you go. That's your answer, if they're Bigfoot or not. You be the judge.